born in Chesley Street, County Durham. It's classed as a workman's place. In saying that, I've always received everything. I mean, my father could always buy me everything that I needed, and I've always had a football to kick about. All of our family were Newcastle supporters, and I've always been a Newcastle supporter since I can remember. And yet the first game I ever went to see was Sunderland v Manchester United, and it was a midweek game, and my father took me. And I can remember I spent the whole match sitting on his shoulders because we got there a little bit late, and it was a full house at Roker Park, and he couldn't get me down to the front, and so that's how I watched the match. And it was a great, exciting game. Bobby Charlton, George Best, all these type of people were playing, and the game ended up as a 2-2 draw.
Hard-working Best put the ball out to the left, where Sadler had been playing like a demon. The return centre was a beauty. Charlton headed it home.
At that time, I think Manchester United were a great team, and I think my father wanted me to go and see players of the calibre of George Best and Bobby Charlton.
Newcastle again. Mitchell beats Ferrier. Robledo has it. He shoots, but the ball hits the post and rebounds to Butler, who clears upfield. Then, with only 8 minutes to go, Jackie Milburn gets the ball 30 yards out. He shoots, and he scored to make...
My father supported Newcastle, and my mother's always supported Newcastle. Her favourite was always Bobby Mitchell playing the wing, but my father was a Jackie Milburn fan. So because of that, I used to go across to Newcastle every week that they were playing at home, and we would go to the match there.
From a Ronnie Rees centre, Wyn Davies headed one for Wales.
I can always remember Wyn Davies. He was powerful in the air, which obviously foreign teams don't particularly like, and so he used to cause them a lot of problems that way. But he was a very good target man, where he'd bring his teammates into the game, and he'd have good movement, and he scored important goals. I was playing for the junior school team, and a friend of mine had joined the Cubs, and they'd got to a semi-final, and he said, you've got to come across and play for the Cubs as well. And this was when I was about 8-year-old. We went on to win the semi-final, and then we went on to win the final, and that was the first sort of little medal that I received in my football career. I went from Chesley Street Junior School to a school called Berkeley Lord Lawson, which was a comprehensive school. At Berkeley Lord Lawson there was a PE teacher called Bill Chapman, and he took me under his wing right from the start, and I think he always thought that there was something there in my football ability.
The first time I saw Bryan, it's going back many years ago, I saw him playing Chesley Street. I was up there to see other boys play as well in this match, but as soon as the players came out, I looked at them and I said, by God, they are small. Some of them are very small, and Bryan happened to be one of those players that was small. Bill
Chapman then knew that I was very small, and so he put me on a weight program, which was doing weight exercise, and I had a friend, Carl Lawrence, who would go back with Mr. Chapman and myself, and we would spend about 3 nights a week, every week, doing this weight routine. And so I'm always thankful to him that he took the time to do that.
He was about 5'1". He didn't weigh more than 6.5 stone. And the thing that impressed me with him, he had the skill, he had determination, he wanted to command, and that I saw in that boy. Driving back from Chesley Street after speaking to his parents, which I met that day, I was thinking, I've seen something I've never seen before in a young boy. All the ingredients that to make a player. Put them together in a saucepan and mix them all up, and he'll come out the star.
When I'd finished school, I'd ended up with about 13 professional clubs showing an interest in myself. I went to Newcastle for a couple of nights training, and I went to West Brom. And to me, West Brom the clubs that I actually went to were the ones who looked after me best, and everything about the club seemed friendly, and that's why I joined them at the end of the day. We'd train on the morning, then we'd go back train on the afternoon, and then they'd always fill the time in the evenings with either taking players to the pictures, or they would go take them to a football match. And it was just very professional the way they looked after you. They put me on a diet of a lot of potatoes and vegetables, and also I had to drink a bottle of Mackerson every night after my meal. And then the one drink that I can always remember, because it wasn't the greatest thing to drink early in the morning, was I'd have sherry, 2 raw eggs, milk and sugar, and they asked me if I would drink that every morning. So that was the type of diet they put me on. An apprenticeship in football is harder than what people think. I think people think young lads go to a football club and they just train, and then they go back to the digs, you know, after they finish training. But as an apprentice, you've got to be in an hour before the first team players go in, or all the professionals go in. You've got to clean boots, tidy the dressing rooms up. You've got to put the kit out for the first team players, and you've got to do odd jobs around the ground. I look back now, and I think it is a good education for the younger lads, because you do know then that you're coming into a hard sport, and if you're going to try and make it to the top, you've got to be hard, and you've got to be single-minded. Don Howe was probably the one manager who learnt me, if you're going to make it in football, you've got to train really hard, because that's the way he felt that footballers should become top players, and how you would improve your performance by being as fit as you could.
Oh, here's Remy Moses. And it's finally in for them. Wow.
In his early days at West Brom, I think he was one of the best 1-2 players, coming, running with the ball from midfield, playing 1-2s off front players and getting in the box and scoring goals. And obviously when a midfield player does that, it alerts everybody, you know. And West Brom in those days obviously were in the first division, and they had a good side, and Bryan getting in the box scoring goals, plus his competitive attitude to fight and want to win, I think it just alerted everybody.
His training techniques was very hard, the hardest I've ever played under. But because that happened in the early stages of my career, I always found training quite easy after working with Don for 4 years.
Twist and turn, come on Gazza, arms high.
As a manager, I felt he was a great coach, probably the best I've ever worked with. But maybe Don as a manager would have been better if he could have man-managed a bit and relaxed a little bit more off the pitch. But Don lived and breathed for football.
Regis is back heel, and what a beautiful one for Cunningham, and a nice bit of play by him as well. Robson going in there. Lovely piece of play there involving Regis and Cunningham, and then Robson going through with a raking drive there, again saved by Bonetti.
When I first took over, in fact he didn't play well at all, Brian. He was, I don't know, I think he was a bit nervous of me at the start, and he didn't play well, and I could see he was a good player, but he just wasn't playing well, and his confidence had gone a little bit. And then during the first year I was there, he got used to me probably, and he came on very strong, and by the end of the season he played quite a few matches.
Johnny Giles was a great player, a great passer of the ball, and that's what he expected from his West Brom team when he was manager there. He expected nobody to give the ball away easy.
He was very tenacious, he was great energy, very brave, good head of the ball, very willing, good character on the pitch, prepared to take responsibility, make his forward runs. He always scored goals, I think, Brian.
I learnt a lot from him as far as midfield play is concerned by watching the way he played and certain things which he expected from players in matches. Ronnie Allen was great towards players. He always wanted players to enjoy themselves in training, in matches, and he would do anything for players off the pitch.
I took over the team and we were playing Manchester United in a cup match. Our regular central defender was injured. Bryan Robson wasn't in the team, and I selected him to play central defender against Joe Jordan, and he gave a superb display against Jordan. In fact, he looked as if he was going to be an outstanding central defender.
He's probably my favourite manager in that I thought his personality and everything with players and the way he could allow players to relax was tremendous. He'd expect players to train very hard. He'd expect them to give commitment on the pitch and give 100%. But he also had the relaxing side on. He'd allow players to relax and, you know, enjoy themselves. His training was, you know, always in a relaxed manner as long as you put 100% into it.
He was just fresh out of school and a junior at West Brom, and created quite an impression then, and I followed his career through the reserves and then on into the first team when he made his debut. He was a tremendously skillful player, but it wasn't really his skill that impressed me so much as his enthusiasm for the game.
Throughout. Good flick, and it's in! Man at the back, who got it? Robson this time without any doubt. Well, I think got the flick across, and Robson came from the back.
People say to me now, how good a player was he at West Brom? I think Bryan Robson was as good a player at the age of 21, 22 as he is now. It's just that he didn't get the recognition then. After a couple of months I put him into the first team on a regular basis, and he stayed in there virtually, well, he's never been out of anybody's first team since.
Just wanting one chipped in, no, it's played in low for him. Back heel for Cantello. What a magnificent goal! What a great goal! Cunningham letting the ball beat Houston, and he's away again to show that pace and grace and control. Just a nicely weighted little pass for Ali Brown, who's turned inside Brian Greenoff. On for Regis. Oh, what a goal! It's gone. Cunningham's going to get past Carrington, and he does. Looking cross, Brown! Yes, that'll do it! Tony Brown, his second goal of the night. Good sprint, good control. Now he's heading for goal. Just stopped, and Regis lets the shot go, and what a save by Bailey! Cantello to Batson. Tony Brown popping up on the right touchline, and a good break here by Robson. 3-all, now a great save by Bailey.
I always enjoyed playing with Alistair Robertson in defence. I would say that he's probably the best defender I've played with. And then you had Laurie Cunningham and Cyril Regis. Laurie and Cyril could have built up a great understanding, which could have even went on to the England international team, because they both seemed to just hit it off together. John Ware was a good captain. He was one of these 100%ers who you knew every week exactly what you would get off him. He never really had a bad game. He was just a very good, steady defender, and you could always rely on him. Jeff Astle, who I think everybody can remember from playing for England, he was a great centre forward, a great player. You know, when I joined West Brom, you also had a great goal scorer in Tony Brown, and then my favourite players were Asa Hartford and Len Cantello at that time.
Well, he was a very small boy from up north. You couldn't really tell. He looked like Asa Hartford looked when he first joined West Brom. Very small, but you could see the determination in the ability that they had.
One thing I did learn from those lads at West Brom at that time was how hard they trained, and I think you looked at them and you saw how hard they trained, and you felt, well, that's the way you've got to do it if you want to play at the top level.
Cunningham.
That's what I learned off them, that every week you go out and you give 100%, and even if you're having a bad game, you still show for the ball. You still want to get on the ball and try to pass and do the right thing. I was in my local pub, which I used to go with two friends, Peter Hill and Steve Shaw, who they're not sportsmen or personalities, you know, they're working lads. And we were in the local pub, and Denise was on her 21st birthday party, and she was with a load of girls and I just asked her if she'd like a drink, and she accepted and that, and we just stood and spoke from there. And I arranged to see her again about a week later, and I took her to the pictures and that, and it just developed from there. We got married in West Bromwich. I invited all the players and the manager, Ron Atkinson. They all come along, and the press took it in as they did from then on. Really, ever since I've been in West Brom's first team, that was the time then that everything you do outside of football is also interesting towards the media.
We went to Switzerland to play in the European Championships together, and that was the first time that basically I'd seen Bryan play in a competitive environment. And I think you could tell then that he was going to be one hell of a player.
I was fortunate enough to play in a really good side which won the Mini World Cup in Switzerland, and play alongside players like Ray Wilkins, Glenn Hoddle, Peter Barnes, who were all exceptional players, and that was a really good team, and that was a great time in my career for being so early and to have so many happy memories, you know, of being away in foreign countries and doing so well.
Bryan was in the forefront of the youth players when I took over from Don Revie. He'd already matured through the youth team, as it were, and was entering into the under-21 phase when I took over, and that's when I first met him. When you're picking a player for the under-21s, you're looking first of all for skill, and that's got to be the most outstanding thing. Secondly, you look for an attitude of mind, and Bryan had that in an abundance. Courage, which was also in an abundance, sometimes recklessly so, which resulted in many cases him getting injured when he shouldn't have done.
I received an injury for West Brom where I turned my ankle over, and Ron Greenwood was picking his squad to go to the European Championships, which was held in Italy in 1980, and because of me turning my ankle, he said that I was one player who had to prove my fitness, and he was going to select 2 players out of 5, but those players had to go to Australia and play against the Australian national team.
The decision that I had to make really boiled down between 2 players. I had to either take Bryan Robson or Glenn Hoddle.
We went over there, and I think I just tried so hard because of wanting to go to Italy that the only time in my career I ever received cramp, and 10 minutes from the end I had cramp, and that was it. And when I talk about disappointments in football, that was probably the biggest one ever, is when Ron Greenwood pulled myself and 2 of the other players to the side and said, you know, thanks very much for everything you've done, but you know, I'm taking Glenn Hoddle. So that was a long trip back, flying back from Australia to England, when you realise that you just lost your chance of going to a European Championships.
There are very few players in a journalistic career that you see who convince you utterly that they should play for the country. Now in this area there have only been a couple. Trevor Francis was one when he was at Birmingham, and he was so outstanding that you just had to tip him for England. And Bryan Robson was another. For the various reasons I've said, for his enthusiasm, his love of the game, his skill, the impact he made locally, I was absolutely convinced that he should play for England. And as a result, I encouraged the newspaper that I worked for at the time, a paper called the Sports Argus, to run a campaign and push this guy for selection. And that was about the 1980 just before the European Championships, and Ron Greenwood was the manager.
I didn't need that type of attention to be drawn to me to know about Bryan Robson. I know all about him anyway. It was just a question of waiting for the right time to pick him. But it was nice to have that type of guarantee coming from the ordinary supporters.
Ron Greenwood actually picked me the first squad that I was involved with, and I'm glad to say that since then every squad I've been involved in, I've always played in the side. I was away with England we were on to, and then I heard that Ron had left to go to Manchester United. He'd done a good job with West Brom, and to have the chance of managing Manchester United, the biggest club in Britain, was a great challenge to Ron.
When I went to Manchester United, they'd been, to be fair, they'd been in the doldrums for a little while, and the team was breaking up, and they were badly in need, or sorely in need of quality midfield players. Obviously, I'd worked with Bryan Robson for 3 or 4 years prior to going to United, and if ever there was a man cut out to do the job at United, it was Robson. So consequently, virtually as soon as I moved to Manchester United, one of my first jobs was to make overtures to West Bromwich Albion to see whether they would sell him.
Why I wanted to leave West Brom to join Manchester United was because West Brom were a good average first division team who would get crowds of anything between 20 and 30,000, where Manchester United were the top club in Britain who can get gates of 40, 50,000. It's very important for the team that I play for to win trophies. That's what I want to do, is win trophies, and I expect my teammates to have that same ambition, that they want to win league championships and they want to win cups. The West Brom years are always happy memories. I met a lot of nice people down there, and I've still got good friends from West Bromwich. I was just a little bit disappointed that we never actually went on to win anything, because I think that team deserved to win a trophy or two. But they give me a good education into what professional football was all about, and I'll always thank them for doing that.
Bryan was admired by everybody at Old Trafford, and we honestly felt that if he joined us, we would have a terrific opportunity of wrestling that league championship away from the likes of Liverpool.
The West Bromwich Albion chairman rang us and said if we were prepared to pay a certain amount of money, namely £1.5 million, then we'd be able to buy Robson. And you know, I said to the board of directors, which was a record transfer fee at the time, I said to the board of directors, that isn't even a gamble. I said, if you buy him, you're buying solid gold.
When he left West Brom, I suppose he left under a bit of a cloud in terms of the fans here, because they appreciated his talent so much, and they were so disappointed that he should take it somewhere else. Now, the press locally, and I was one of them, was also critical of him when he did that. But I think that we were thinking more in terms of our own disappointment that he should be moving on, that such a good player should be leaving the area, and we could ill afford that at the time.
It was very much a storm in a teacup, and it was very much localised. When you say the Midlands, I don't even think it was the Midlands. I think it was about 3 square miles in Birmingham, namely the immediate area surrounding West Bromwich Albion.
It was fabulous. I mean, all I was doing was going out and sitting at a table and signing the contract with Martin Edwards and Ron Atkinson either side of me, and there's 50,000 people there, and they give me a great reception. You know, and really, to be fair to Manchester United fans, they've done that ever since.
To the second half.
I think what you feel is the charisma around Manchester United. Everybody wants to know what Manchester United are doing. Whether it's one day or whether it's the next week, everybody wants to know about it.
It couldn't have been easy, coming from a side such as West Brom and coming into a pressure cooker atmosphere such as Old Trafford. It couldn't have been very easy. You have a lot to prove when you play at Old Trafford, and thankfully over the years he's proved himself more than valuable member of a United side.
I remember my debut was against the Republic of Ireland at Wembley. And Kevin Keegan scored 2 great goals, and we won 2-0. It was just fabulous to sort of be walking out for your country at Wembley. You know, in front of, I think it was about 50,000-60,000 that night.
Went across to Oslo to play against Norway in a World Cup game, and we were beaten by Norway, which you know, was a disaster. We were absolutely hammered, and quite rightly so, by the press for losing to a team like Norway. But we started quite well. Bryan put us into the lead, but as I say, we lost the game. But you know, the only thing that positive came out of the game was the performance of Bryan Robson.
The first goal, which he scored for England, which was against Norway, away from home. But it was a disappointing result. We got beat 2-1. And I can always remember a radio reporter from Norway giving it, "Maggie Thatcher, we have showed your boys a lesson." And a lot of people thought that was, you know, funny at the time because the commentator got so carried away in that. But none of the players on our coach thought it was that funny.
It's so easy for players to come in and forget what they've been picked to do because of what they've done every week. And some of them tend to think they've got to do a bit more. Some of them tend to tie up or over-elaborate. But Bryan's strength was he came into the side, he played as he did for West Bromwich Albion, he played as he did in the under-21s, and in no time at all he fitted into the side.
But it's England then in this change strip of red and white.
To play in a World Cup finals is any player's highlight of the career, you know, and it was for myself.
Attack the goals to the right in the first half.
For anyone to play in a World Cup is something special, and for anyone to score a goal like Bryan Robson did as early as he did is something special. I remember the atmosphere in the dressing room before the French game. Playing against Platini and Jedes and Tigana. It was quite a daunting experience because you know, they are a good team, the French.
And Ray Wilkins playing the first penetrating pass in the direction of Steve Coppell inside Max Botti.
We were in training and Kenny Sanson had always took long throw-ins. And anyway, this morning Stevie Coppell just turned round and he said, he says, "I can take a long throw-in from the right if you want."
Of course, for all the England players, the final stages representing a new challenge. And a goal! Robson!
What was so special about it was the fact that Bryan made this run from midfield, which he's so good at, and he's very, very difficult to mark. And he forced his way into that penalty box and, you know, finished very, very well.
And inside 40 seconds against Italy, should left Robson entirely. He stretched and he beat Italy.
It was a long throw. Stevie Coppell took it down the right wing, got flicked on into the box. The fellow was in the box, and he's knocked the goal in, and in a hell of an awkward position because the ball's bounced. Teddy Butcher's flicked it on, and it's up here, and he's got to get a volley and keep it down to knock it past the French keeper. It's things like that he does so well.
England's throw, and look at the French marking here. This is Rick and Francis. And Soler onside against Butcher. And magnificently finished. With a score flash at Algeria are leading West Germany 2-1. And Robson makes it 2-1 here.
To start off a World Cup finals and win 3-1. And against one of the fancied teams as well. So you couldn't have had a better start. I received a lovely watch. I was just saying to the lads after the game, I was saying, well, it's very difficult to split a watch between 22 of us. It's still the fastest goal ever in the World Cup finals.
Players, the final stages, representing a new challenge. And a goal! Robson! In under 30 seconds from Terry Butcher's flick.
I look back and I just feel if we'd just had a little bit more luck against the Germans, or just been maybe a little bit more adventurous in our own game, we could have went on to maybe have even won it that year.
It was a great pleasure to be captain. I think any young lad that is interested in football always dreams about playing for England, playing at Wembley Stadium, and to be fortunate enough to fulfil both and then be selected as captain as well. Really, what more could you ask for?
Bobby Moore led England up to the Royal Box to receive the Jules Rimet Cup and the winners' medals. To be here as winners of the FA Cup has often been described as the summit of a footballer's ambition. How much greater was the triumph they enjoyed now.
To be given the opportunity to be captain of the England team, you know, at the age of just 22, was something that was very, very special to me.
And curled in by what a chance at a first finish for Bryan Robson.
It always been my intention when he came to Manchester United to give him a position of authority, basically because I felt he was a natural leader. Not what you would call the demonstrative type of skipper, but more one that led by example and had the utmost respect of his fellow players because of the way he played and because of his ability.
We played down at Bournemouth in a League Cup tie, and unfortunately I had an accident and broke a few bones in the face, and I was out of the game I think for 12 weeks, 13 weeks. Well, in that time Bryan had taken over the captaincy of United and of England.
Ray didn't get it back when he was fit again, and so I felt a little bit sorry for Ray, but obviously I didn't want to give up the opportunity of being captain of United in England.
In Wilkinson and in Robson, obviously Manchester United had a nice combination, two midfield players, quite different, and we used them obviously in the same role as in the England team. What ultimately happened was, of course, was that Robson stood out as a captain.
Bobby Robson took over the management after the '82 World Cup finals, and we went in the European Championship games. We were playing Greece away, and he came over to me in training and he said I'd like me to captain the team. And to me, that it was an honour playing for your country, but to actually captain your country.
You have to see, in many respects, eye to eye with each other. I could do certain things before a match and at half time. I can do absolutely nothing during the course of the match, and that's when the captain plays the role of the manager. He can actually do the work that you want players to do during the course of the game, and if he does that, then he's a very, very good captain indeed.
The manager of the international side has a more difficult job, I think, than a club manager, because what he's got to do, he's got to get players from all over the country, from different teams, playing different tactics and playing in different positions, and he's got to gel them all together at international level. I can't believe the way media could slaughter somebody like Bobby Robson as badly as what they have done over the last few years. I mean, he feels so much for England, and he wants to do so well for England, and he appreciates the supporters in the street who all support England loyally. He's always asking myself as captain if the players are happy, if they need anything, are they happy with the accommodation. Everything he does is all based around England doing well.
Will take it. Tipped in once more towards Robson. Stapleton in there too. Oh, and it's given. It's Robson again, who got that finishing touch. Nodded down by Stapleton. McQueen was right in there, and there's Robson getting in there before the ball crosses the line, and it's 3-0.
The two matches that really stick out is the two FA Cup wins that we've had, especially the first one. We played Brighton in the replay and we won 4-0, and I scored 2 goals.
And the referee looking at a penalty to United,
During the Brighton game, we were 3-0 up, and we received the penalty, and I'd been brought down for the penalty. And so, because of scoring the 2 goals, I had one of the lads say, "You know, fancy it," and the crowd were shouting for me to take the penalty. But Arnold Muren had been a good servant to the club. You know, as far as a foreigner had been concerned, he'd done really well, and it was nominated that was his job, you know, before the match had started, that he was a penalty taker.
Well, in the cup final replay, he actually scored 2 goals in the final, and in fact probably could have been one of, you know, he spurned the chance of taking a last-minute penalty, which would have given him one of the few hat-tricks in cup finals.
I lifted the cup for the first time, and so that was a fantastic feeling, and the atmosphere that was in a cup final was better than anything I'd ever known. It was bad memories for myself, because I dislocated my shoulder with about 10 weeks before the World Cup to go. Experts were telling me if I build up the shoulder enough, it could maybe hold out. So that's what I went on to do. I was sort of doing like 500 press-ups a day to build the shoulder up.
If we had not taken him, and we had got knocked out, as we did in the World Cup anyway, everyone, without exception, would have said to me, "But why didn't you take Bryan Robson? You know, why didn't you take the chance? You never know what the boy might have done for you. He was worth the chance." We knew he was injured. We knew it was a calculated gamble. We knew he had a dicky shoulder, and we knew it might come out in the course of the match.
If they'd gone for the radical treatment which finally cured it, the surgery, he would have missed the World Cup anyway. So I think the decision to operate was delayed to see if he would get through it, and we nearly made it. Which kept the shoulder in, and he couldn't take throw-ins, so that the shoulder was kept low. And to a degree, that looked as though we were going to win. But finally, it did come out against Morocco, and he came off, and there was no question of him going back on. He came home, had surgery done, and was ready for the next season, and has had no trouble ever since.
It didn't quite work out for me, because the second game that I played in the '86 finals, I dislocated my shoulder. And so I just had to sit on the sideline and cheer the lads on after that.
We knew he was a gamble, but like I'm saying, it was a gamble which we were forced to take. Unfortunately, it didn't come off for us. The sad thing was that we had to play the World Cup in 1986 without our best player.
The first time I broke my leg was was for West Bromwich Albion, against Tottenham Hotspur, and I can remember the centre forward Chris Jones went to shoot, and I come across and I slid in and toe poked the ball away. Well, he went to shoot at goal, and he just kicked me straight in the side of the leg, and I felt it was numb, but it didn't feel too bad. So I got up and I tried to run, and I just collapsed in a heap, and that's when I realised that it was broken.
Playing is quite frightening at times. The tackles he does go in for is, I mean, I'm not known for tackling, but I mean, he goes in for balls which really probably shouldn't at times, and he always comes up winning them.
I suppose real courage, real bravery is bordering on going over the top, isn't it? You know, I mean, you can't have it both ways. Real courageous people will occasionally get hurt.
I don't think he could change the way he plays. He's a great competitor. I think if you start backing off things or not quite going in fully, you're probably liable to get more injured anyway.
Robbo's often gone into challenges where it makes you cringe. A lot of other players wouldn't even attempted to do that. But he's been in there, and unfortunately he's picked up a few injuries because of that.
Many have said, why have I had so many injuries? Many feel it's because of the fact that you know, my explosiveness off the mark is a problem. But I go along with the same theory with Bryan. That same theory with Bryan is that you know, it's just the way we are.
I just play the game how I find it natural. I don't think about it. I just see the ball, and if the ball's there to be won, well, I'll go and get it, or I'll go and try and get it. I still feel that now, even after all the injuries. And when I don't feel that, well, then I'll know it's time to pack in.
I was delighted to inherit him. You know, the players of Bryan Robson's calibre are very far between. I think that you judge it this way, that not only has he been important to Manchester United for the last decade, but he's been the axis in which England have gained any success at all in the last 10 years. And Bryan Robson is this thing about timing, that, for instance, if two players got to head a ball, there's other players that wandering about, wondering where it's going to drop. But Bryan is there knowing where it's going to drop. There's a sense of where things are going to happen. There's a sense of danger, what danger is going to be. And when a ball comes into the penalty box, when he's attacking, he seems to know exact moment when that cross is coming and where it's going to land. And he has this great timing to be there. When you look at him, he has the animal running style of a long, striding player, and it's quite exciting actually to see him in full flow when the legs open up. And for a smallish lad, he has a tremendously long stride.
In the FA Cup final against Crystal Palace, you know, Manchester United are trailing, you know, they're looking to get on equal terms, the ball comes into the box, there's a lot of people there, it's in the back of the net, and you'd have probably thought 60,000 people says, well, who scored that? You know, jumping up and down, a lot of people in there, it's not quite clear who scored it, and suddenly it's on the scoreboard, it's Robson. You know, he's in at the death, he's in at the kill.
Danny Wallace crossed the ball from the right, and I was at the far post and headed it downwards, where I think the keeper might have saved it because it was going towards him, but it ricocheted off somebody's legs and went into the net. So that put us back into the game at 1-1. Then Mark Hughes scored a cracking goal to go 2-1 up. So we were all on a high at that time. But then when Stevie Coppell brought the lad right on, he scored a really good goal in the cup final. And that's what cup finals are all about, really, you know, scoring goals like that. But I thought the atmosphere in the replay was a lot better than what it was in the first game. And I think maybe as it was, our fans knew that we would have to put in a good performance to beat Crystal Palace, and it wasn't just going to be a case of a walkover. And I think at the end of the day, the second half, we definitely deserved our victory.
A chance here, and a goal!
In cup finals, it's smashing when it's a very good, highly skilled goal that wins the match. And I thought in the replay, the goal was deserving of a cup final.
And smashed it with his right foot.
To me, though, going up the steps is fabulous because of the atmosphere, and you know it's people who really do love the club that you play for. And you know, when you pick that cup up and it sets the crowd off, the way they get behind the team and they really show their emotion, and that does get yourself emotional, and you just feel so delighted for them all connected with the club. People always say to me, is it any better one time picking the cup up to, you know, doing it the third time? To me, if anything, I think I might have felt just slightly more excited because I felt so much for some of the younger lads who took a lot of stick over the season, and I was delighted for them that they'd won something in the first year at the club, which was great for them. And so I think that got me a bit more excited than what I probably was in the 2 times before that when I'd won the cup.
Normally, by the time he gets home, he's about 8 o'clock at night, and he's usually got all his aggression out in the inn. He has a few pints with the lads and they argue it out. So by the time he gets home, he's usually in quite a good mood, really. So not too bad.
They'll get all the football out of the system, so when you go out with the girls later, you're not sitting there talking over the table about football all night.
I used to go to matches quite a lot, but really now with 3 kids I don't have much time to go, and they don't particularly like going, so I tend to stay at home with them.
When I come home after the match, she'll not be going, oh well, why didn't you do this or why didn't you do that, and the team's not playing how they should be, and you don't get questions like that. So when you get in the house, you can completely relax away from football. Ever since I played for West Brom, there was a couple of other players there who always loved to go racing, and so I went along with them when I was young, and it gradually grew on me, and the more I went, the more I studied the form of horses and the breeding of horses. Tailor-Made Boy was my first horse, and just lately I've just bought a nice 2-year-old.
If he's not occupied, which he is most of the day, I mean, people think football's just a morning thing, training, and that's it. But if he's not occupied, he's walking about like a lost soul in the house. I think he'll have to stay in football, because I think he'd be a bear with a sore head without football. So it'll be up to him what he does at the end of the day.
Hopefully I'll stay in the game and I'll go into either management or stay in the game in some way as a coach. But if that fails and I don't get a job which I feel could give me enough satisfaction and enough challenge, well then I have got a couple of businesses which I can fall back on. The one thing that I would like to do before I finish is win the league championship. I'd hate to think that I'd retire from football without winning the league championship. I would like to have thought that I could maybe have played for another European club to compete against the top players in the world. That would have been a nice challenge to see how you could do. But in saying that, I've always enjoyed my time at United, and really I wouldn't really change it. It has been a smashing time there.
He's captained his country, he's captained the biggest club in the country. He's had the highlight of every player's career in the fact that he's skippered a team at Wembley in cup finals. And when you come into football, that's everybody's dream to do that. So whilst he's missed out on certain things, he has had an excellent career.
We've had approaches from clubs in England, you know, but I mean Bryan Robson in another jersey doesn't really look right now, you know. I think he'll end his days here.
About 2 months before the beginning of the year, I received a letter informed me that I'd been awarded the OBE.
It was a great pleasure to receive the OBE. I think to be honoured by your country is something that is always something to be proud of. I mean, I was always proud just to play for my country, but to be honoured by the country in that sort of form was always, you know, something that was very, very special, and something that you know, I'll always be very proud of and was delighted to receive.
The girls got their new outfits and we went off down to London, and it was a great day at Buckingham Palace. It was a great experience for the girls and for myself. I've always thought winning the FA Cup or winning things with the team is for the team and for yourself. And to me, the family, that was a one for the family. You know, to receive something like the OBE was a great day, and you know, I know how my dad's proud of me being a footballer, but I could imagine how he felt, you know, just thinking about the OBE.
He's playing it on again for Olsen. Turn it goes to the right side. Stevens is watching him. Davis just playing it back to Robson.
Looking at him as a person, I think that he's an unquenchable spirit for sport, and he has the sense of adventure that makes him what he is today, and he's never lost that. He's still a little boy seeking the end of the rainbow.
He's very quiet, very likeable chap, likes to laugh, very dry sense of humour. As I said before, very rarely buys a drink, so it's up to the rest of the lads to look after him. Likes to drink, like as we all do, likes to relax with us, and it's been a pleasure knowing him.
He takes great pleasure at being the England captain. So would anyone. It's the highest honour that you can achieve in football. He's very proud of it, but he's never allowed it to affect him, and he's just a normal guy.
He's had his problems with injuries over the years, and I think, you know, without those injuries, you know, he could have been nearing 100 caps, and that for a midfield player in a modern game would have been tremendous. But no, I mean, his leadership is great to for younger players to look up to, you know, and like I say, there's no question about his bravery in the box and his goal scoring ability.
A lot of people have enjoyed watching him play, and I think that's the important thing, when people go away from the stadium and say, I enjoyed that performance today, and that's what it's all about.
We've made him England's captain. Do I need to say anything more? He actually is in charge of the England team on the field of play. And we give him that role, we give him that responsibility, because we know he will handle it absolutely superbly.
One always knew that if Bryan was in the side, he was going to be the centre of all the things that were going on in midfield, and that's important. You've got to have people in charge in midfield. They're not only winning the ball, they're using the ball. They're not only, in Bryan's case, scoring goals as well. And he personifies, really, all the things that are good in English football. All in all, I would think he is almost the perfect footballer and the perfect midfield player of the modern age.
All I ever aim to do is to go out and play football to the best of my ability, and if kids look at you and they like to copy you and they enjoy watching you, well then that's what it's all about as far as I'm concerned.